Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about blackberries. Even though I have done a few videos on blackberries in the past, however this one I just wanted to compile together a bunch of things I've learned about growing blackberries over the course of this season, because I've learned a lot. I also want to include in here some other experiments and ideas that I've been playing around with blackberries, so I can try and find how they grow best in my garden. Okay, so I added onto this fence for the blackberries. I took some bamboo poles and I lashed them to some metal stakes which were hammered into the ground. Since it's only about 7 or 8 feet that I had to cover in length, I chose to use this method instead of cutting through wire and setting that all up only for like 7 or 8 feet. I just didn't think it was worth it. At least for a year or two, this structure should hold up relatively well. And from that point, maybe I can change things around if need be. So here we are looking at part of the blackberry patch. And down here we have some rue. This is an herb that can grow in similar conditions as the blackberry. It doesn't need terribly rich soil to thrive, and neither does the blackberry. And it may help to benefit the blackberry, maybe by attracting pollinators. Some people claim that it can detract mice and flea beetles and Japanese beetles, some of these creatures that may otherwise find the blackberry to be highly attractive. I'm also just trying to take more advantage of space, and in the understory, underneath the blackberry plants, instead of having bare soil, I like to try to fill in with different kinds of plants. I may also add some chives in here, maybe some mint, to act as a living mulch, and those are also commonly perceived to be companion plants to the blackberry as well. But I try to minimize bare soil as much as possible. As the growing season gets colder, you may notice that the leaves of certain species, especially this blackberry plant right here, tend to take on a more purplish coloration. I think this may be because that the soil temperature gets to a certain point where the microbial activity becomes less active. So the plant is not able to get all of the nutrients in the same capacity that it was able when it was much warmer out. And one of those nutrients is phosphorus. And phosphorus, I think, is used in the transportation of photosynthetic products that result from the photosynthesis in the leaves, to transport those to various places in the plants. However, when the plant does not have enough access to available phosphorus, it has to do something else with those sugars that are produced from the result of photosynthesis. And so it stores them in the leaves in a much more stable form, right? Because glucose can break down fairly easily, right? So that needs to be, that can cause fermentation. And, so you want to avoid this process of fermentation, right, in the leaves. So what the plant does is it converts it to anthocyanins, which are a reddish purplish pigmentation that you see here in these plants. Anthocyanins, of course, if you have been into or paying attention to latest trends in food, in health food and things like that, a lot of people like to talk about the anthocyanins being very strong antioxidants, and so they also may possibly help out with associated diseases or conditions that may be a result of oxidative stress. According to a cursory amount of research that I've done, this is how plants can create or generate anthocyanins. Of course, blackberries are known for their edible fruit, the blackberry. And as these berries began to ripen throughout the summer, I picked them and I put them in jars, and I froze them essentially as is for use over the winter. And that worked out really well. The blackberries ended up having a fairly good consistency, obviously a little bit softer after they thawed. They were just as delicious to put on any dish that you might put blackberries on. You know, maybe you want to add them into a salad for a special kind of kick, or if you want to, or you know, you put them on top of your breakfast, or add them into a smoothie, whatever it may be, and they worked great for that. So hopefully we can expand upon that in the coming years. These guys seem to be pretty enthusiastic about it. They've sent out all kinds of runners and branches, so hopefully a good crop can be gleaned next season. So of course humans are not the only creatures that enjoy the fruit of this plant, but birds can as well, among other animal species who may also enjoy the fruit. But what I did to help mitigate this potential challenge was I essentially just copied what my neighbor had done. He had taken aluminum pie tins, and he had tied them, he had cut a hole in one part of the pie tin, and he tied these pie tins incrementally along the length of the fence. And so I did the same thing this past season, and it seemed to work. And I don't know if there's any like solid research that may either prove or strongly suggest that this works or not, but through my own anecdotal experimentation, I have not had an issue with bird pressure resulting in a loss of the berries. I also made a point to go out and harvest as soon as I could, as they ripened. But yeah, and so I'm not sure if it's the shiny nature of the aluminum pie tins that reflect the light and may make certain animals to be a little bit more wary, a little bit more cautious about entering with that reflection of light. Also the noise factor too, like in any wind or in any gentle breeze, the pie tins can kind of clash against the fence and create a little bit of noise, right? So whether with the light reflection or the noise factor, and those are elements that can create disturbance, and they might be able to spook certain animals out of a particular area of the garden. So that's my theory anyway. Other pests I may have encountered with this plant, I have seen the spotted lanternfly on it occasionally throughout the past season or so, but I've never noticed it to do any real damage. But it does like to hang out on the stems of the plant, but not in very large numbers. So I was wondering if potentially the blackberry plants were still getting themselves established. I never really noticed a whole lot of them, but it's definitely something to keep an eye out and watch out for and be aware of. There's a possibility that maybe these blackberry plants were not able to carry out photosynthesis as effectively as they could be. You know, but it's the whole question of you know, why are these insects here on this plant? Are they just a pest that shows up randomly, or are they there for a reason, right? Specifically a reason having to do with some type of deficiency in the plant or the landscape or something like that. So the whole question of, you know, what is this teaching me, and how can I apply this to having a healthy crop in future seasons? Also, the Japanese beetle really didn't go after the blackberry plants too much. They would nibble on the leaves a little bit occasionally, but really not very much. Not like they attack other plants. Like they really attack evening primrose, for example. I've only noticed them occasionally chewing on the leaves, but aside from that, so far they haven't really been much of a factor. And I just want to point out here with some of these blackberry plants that I had transplanted a couple of months ago back in December. Most of the ones that I transplanted have been chewed up pretty well by the voles and such. Let's see if we can get this to focus. Maybe not. There we go. But yeah, you can see the vole damage is pretty extensive here. We'll see if these guys are able to make a comeback or not. Maybe the rabbits have gone at this too. But yeah, but you can kind of tell though with the established plants, there's not as nearly as much damage. You know, they still have their buds. They haven't undergone much of any browse or anything like that from these established plants that are growing quite well. But it's the newly transplanted ones that have been sustaining the damage. Yeah, these guys all look pretty good. Until we get to the ones that I had transplanted again on the other side of the patch, and these have all been chewed up pretty good as well. So that's interesting. I'm not totally sure why they're going predominantly for the ones that I transplanted a couple of months ago, but yeah, that's just something to keep an eye on. I'm not totally sure what made the freshly transplanted plants more susceptible. You know, I don't know if these plants are just too big and fibrous and thick, and the other ones are just a little bit smaller, a little bit more anemic looking, might be softer to chew, I don't know. But yeah, that was just something interesting I thought I'd share some notes on, some observations, and we'll go from there. All right.